Okay, let's just jump right into this explainer by tackling a totally universal pain point. I mean, I'm sure you've been there, right? You absolutely crush the grammar test. You memorize like 100 vocabulary words using your flashcards. But the second you step off the plane and try to do something as simple as ordering a coffee abroad, boom, you completely freeze up. The words just literally vanish. So, what's actually going on there? Well, welcome to our explainer on the psychology of language learning. Today, we're zooming way past the textbooks and the endless grammar drills. We want to uncover why our brains sometimes literally just stop us from speaking. But don't worry, we're really going to focus on the solution, exploring how we can finally break through that invisible barrier and achieve actual, real-world fluency. To get there, here's our cognitive roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The language learning freeze. 2. The affective filter hypothesis. 3. Willingness to communicate. 4. The WTC pyramid model. 5. Cultural context in WTC. And finally, 6. Breaking down language barriers. Let's get right into it. Part 1. The language learning freeze. Let's start with the root of the problem itself. Now, we absolutely have to debunk a massive myth right off the bat. We all kind of tend to think, hey, if I just study harder, I'll speak better, right? But high linguistic competence doesn't actually guarantee spontaneous speaking. It just doesn't. Research clearly shows that your emotional state can completely hijack your cognitive resources. When you're anxious or terrified of making a mistake, your brain literally reroutes its working memory away from processing language and sends it all to manage your emotional distress. So it's not that you forgot the words, not at all. It's just that your brain is way too busy panicking to actually access them. And to really understand the science behind this freeze, we need to look at part 2, the affective filter hypothesis. Okay, so the crucial concept here is Stephen Krashen's theory. He explains that negative emotional conditions create an actual psychological filter. Think of it like a massive brick wall inside your mind. When your anxiety spikes, or your motivation drops, or your self-confidence takes a hit, bam, that wall goes straight up. And when the wall is up, it blocks all that great comprehensible input, the vocab and grammar you're trying so hard to learn, from ever reaching your internal language acquisition system. You hear the words, sure, but you just don't absorb them. But conversely, when we manage to lower that filter, when we feel calm, relaxed, supported, we hit the holy grail of language learning, willingness to communicate, or WTC. Now, WTC was originally studied in our native languages, right? And there, it's mostly seen as a pretty stable personality trait. Like, some people are just naturally talkative. But as researchers quickly realized, WTC is a totally different ballgame when applied to a second language. It is incredibly fluid. Which brings us to part 3, willingness to communicate. What does it actually mean to be ready to speak? So, unlike speaking your native tongue, speaking a second language is highly situational. Think about it. You might be totally down to chat with a close friend in your second language over dinner, right? But then absolutely terrified to answer a question in a formal classroom setting. Because it's so situational, researchers pointed out this really incredible detail. Simply raising your hand in class is a massive indicator of WTC, even if you don't actually speak in that exact moment. Just the act of raising your hand shows a behavioral intention to speak, assuming, of course, the immediate environment makes you feel safe and capable. Check out this powerful quote. It really captures the ultimate consensus among researchers. Merely teaching grammar and vocab is totally useless if the student is entirely unwilling to actually use the language in authentic, real-world interactions. I mean, if the filter is up, the program has basically failed. The goal isn't just accumulating knowledge, it's the absolute readiness to use that knowledge. A lot of this understanding is driven by some truly groundbreaking research from McIntyre, Dornier, Clement, and Knowles. They essentially set out to map the exact neurological and psychological steps that happen right before that split-second decision to open your mouth and speak. To visualize this whole complex mechanism, let's look at part 4, the WTC pyramid model. Notice how we climb up here, layer by layer. At the very base of the pyramid, we've got your deep-rooted, enduring influences. This is your basic personality, plus the overall social climate between different cultural groups. Then, as we move up to the middle layers, we get into your specific motivations. Like, do you genuinely want to connect with the culture, or are you just trying to pass a test? Moving up again, we hit the situated antecedents right near the top. This is the fleeting, immediate stuff. Do you feel confident right now, in this exact moment? And do you actually want to speak to the specific person standing in front of you? Finally, at the absolute peak of the pyramid, all of these layers align to produce that exact situational moment where you decide to communicate. But here's the twist. This pyramid doesn't look exactly the same everywhere. Let's move to part 5, cultural contexts in WTC. We can compare two really fascinating case studies here. On one side, we have Chinese ESL students. In traditional Confucian-influenced cultures, there's often a strong emphasis on what's called the other-directed self, meaning people are highly focused on how they are perceived by the group and deeply fear a loss of face. Historically, learning there has been quite submissive, where the teacher is the ultimate authority and rote memorization is favored over taking spontaneous risks. Naturally, this suppresses the willingness to communicate verbally. On the flip side, in Japan, students often face a super rigid exam-focused culture where English is treated almost like a complex math puzzle. But there is also this growing desire, driven by government guidelines, for what researchers call an international posture, a genuine, deep urge to connect with the global community outside their borders. And this acts as a powerful motivator to increase WTC, directly pushing back against the anxiety of making mistakes. So how do we actually fix this? That brings us to our final stop, part 6, breaking down language barriers. Okay, so here are the practical, classroom-tested solutions to finally lower that affective filter. First up, teachers have got to develop low-anxiety environments. This means we literally have to normalize errors. Making mistakes has to be seen as just a totally natural part of learning, not something to be punished. We need to push for collaborative tasks rather than competitive ones. Second, leaning on self-determination theory, we have to boost intrinsic motivation. Simply put, give learners autonomy and keep the material culturally relevant to them. They have to actually care about what they're saying. And third, we build learner confidence through careful scaffolding, moving gradually from simple stuff to complex tasks, so the learner experiences small, continuous wins. I really want to leave you with this provocative thought. The next time you try to learn a new language, or honestly anything new, take a moment to analyze your own emotional barriers. What exactly is your affective filter, and who will you talk to today? Recognize that wall, acknowledge it's there, and then challenge yourself to step right to the top of that pyramid and just communicate. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.